So, here's God, Father. Here's children. You think it's disrespectful to nail your father to a tree? Do you think that's honoring your father or your mother as you're nailing them to a tree? And so now what is God's mind filled with? How can I fill them with my love? Father, forgive them. Let us sin and death away from them. Let us bring an end to sin in the flesh. What does it say in Genesis chapter 6? The end of all human flesh has come before us. You know what's actually saying that? Go read the word human. The end of corruptible flesh has come before us. What did he do? Right after he says that, he takes the corruptible flesh body, the old man, where? Into the grave. And he come out a man that wasn't in a body made from dust. He come out as a man that was clothed in a body that was forged by the fire of God's life. Right? Thus, testifying a word to man that can fill them with love and set them free from laboring and toiling. Set them free from torment. Set them free from the fear of death. Right? And it's like, God corrects from that way.
Right.
When we're busy like smacking them in the face, he's busy thinking, how can I fill them with my love? Because he sees the reason we'd be smacking them in the face is because we're filled with the fear of death. We're being tormented. Right? And to speak to the eternal life thing, one of the reasons that strengthens him to be able to do that, because I found myself in the place where I realized, okay, I can see why they're doing these horrible things to me. I can see they don't really want to. I can see they're taken captive by something contrary to them, and it's bringing forth fruit and actions and words in them that even they don't like after the fact. Even the fruit that's coming out of them is tormenting them. Okay, I see all that. I'm no longer confusing who they are with what they've done. But then I found myself in a special kind of place where I said, but God, they're still messing up my life. So great. They don't want to mess up my life, but they're messing up my life. And so that's what I was left with. And God, oh, are they? Well, whose life is yours, Greg? Who's the father of your life? Whose life are you identifying with in this place? Are you putting on the old man, whose life is death? Are you putting on the old man, whose life has been fathered by this world and his life is corruptible? Or are you putting on the new man, who's been created after the image and likeness of God? Right? Whose life can't be harmed. Whose life can't be corrupted. And then all of a sudden, I found I didn't just think fondly about them in the place of them doing bad, but I started finding myself feeling love for them while they were doing whatever they were doing to me, because I no longer viewed it as them being able to take something from me. It doesn't matter if you nail God to a tree. He's still God. It doesn't matter if you don't acknowledge him as Father. He's still Father. You can't add to Father and you can't take away from Father. And he's filled with that. Right? And he comes to fill us with that. So that we can view things like that. And we can view our kids like that. And we can view our relationships like that. With spouses, with friends, with all of that. Right? And the eternal life thing. Absolutely. Eternal life means with perpetuity. So to even try and define it with the concept of time would be illogical, because eternal life existed before time existed. Right? And that we're not going to be dwelling in time at the end of the age. Right? There's no more time. There's no going to more be a sun and a moon going up like this. It says that there's a light in the middle of the earth, and that light is God, and it's shining all the time. Right? And so absolutely, it's a somewhat off thing to try to describe eternal life, strictly speaking, from the concept of being in time. What I will say, though, is the idea of eternal life being with perpetuity, without beginning or end, most certainly speaks of it not being able to die. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's trying to speak of, an incorruptible life, right? And that incorruptible life does something in you. You actually can't experience the presence of God apart from being persuaded, I possess eternal life. Mm-hmm. That's what causes you to be enveloped in the presence of God. You actually can't even call God Father outside of your heart being persuaded that you have eternal life. You can't know God as your Father apart from your heart being filled with eternal life. You could say all you like. Well, I come from the architect in the sky. You know, we all come from the great ball of energy. That's not calling God Father. That's not what it means to call God Father. To call God Father isn't just in name or theory, or even to say we all come from him. That's not what it means to call God Father. It's to know his heart and what is in his heart. right? And one of the things, Jesus is like a meet and greet with God. You know, you have a meet and greet so you can get to know someone, right? And in getting to know them a little better, you develop like a level of comfort with one another, right? I know you, you know me, we know what to expect each other, we good, now we going forward, right? So Jesus is like a meet and greet with God, and Jesus is introducing us to the Father as He's being nailed to the tree. He's bearing the heart and soul of God to mankind on the tree, right? But we've spent so much time talking about the anguish and suffering of Jesus as a man over on account of the death He suffered, and even God. We talk about God's suffering from the perspective of He put on a skin suit and He knows what death feels like personally. Those things are all true. And those are powerful things to talk about. But we also want to talk about God being nailed to a tree, and the suffering He experienced there was on account of the suffering He saw we were experiencing while we were nailing Him to a tree. Because when you start seeing God like that, listen, man, that will mess you up on the inside in a good way. You start feeling loved unconditionally. You begin to be introduced to the heart of God. And you begin to know that guy. Isaiah said it this way, that Jesus carried our griefs and our sorrows. It says Jesus was smitten and stricken by man, and we esteem that He was smitten and stricken by God. You know one of the things Isaiah is saying there? That the reason man crucified Jesus was because they were filled with grief and sorrow.
Right.
That's what Isaiah is saying there. Man thinks God smote and struck. Man thinks God's the one responsible for Jesus being crucified. But actually, man's the one that crucified Jesus. Oh, and by the way, the reason they crucified Jesus is because they were filled with grief and sorrow. Every imagination of their heart was every day filled with laboring and toiling to try to attain to life, to be justified through their own works. And that filled their heart with grief and sorrow. It filled their heart with the fear of death. And that caused them to nail the Lord of glory to a tree. I mean, think about this guy just came to heal us and we nailed Him to a tree. Listen, most people at that point are like, okay, they're forgetting about the people they came to heal because now they need to worry about themselves. They being nailed to a tree. Right. But this guy, in spite of the fact that we're nailing him to a tree, even when he only came to heal us, it's not like He came and said, I'm going to need to beat you with the whip. I'm going to need to extract a pound of flesh from you. And then maybe if you endure that, then I'll give you life. No. He just came to heal us for free. Right. And then we nailed Him to a tree. And in spite of that, that guy is still more concerned about our suffering as we're driving nails into His hands.